All right, one more time. You only get to see the finished product, so you don't know how many times I screwed up between now and then. Anyway, uh, here we are for our basic math review. This is the simple stuff you need to know to get through the class. And really hope if you need a good understanding of this will make the class easier for you. As I've said earlier, some of you will have to work harder than others to get through this class, but I can get you through this class. But this is the basics, that the foundation of what you need to know to get through the class. Okay, so this will be posted in Canvas, and you can refer back to it at any time. Of course, I'm always available. Well, not always, but I am available during office hours, etc. And tutors and whatever resources you need. But this will really make your life easier if you follow these rules and accept these rules, and we'll move on. So I'm going to run through this pretty quick, 20 minutes maybe. And then I'm going to leave it up for you. And there's some exercises for you to do. There's an answer sheet that goes along with it with the answers to the odd problem. Let you know how you're doing, and you can work at your own pace if you need to. Right. So here we go. I'm going to bring up the first part, and we're going to go through this real quick. Okay. So here we are. Supplemental, the basic math review, right? So we have an order of operations. That's what we call, right? The operations in mathematics are, there's 4: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And we do them in a certain order. And actually the order is multiplication, division, addition, then subtraction, right? Multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. And that's how we do things, right? So that's our order of operations. And then the first rule is when there are parentheses, what's inside the parentheses gets done first. You basically, in all problems, work from the inside out. So you take care of what's in the parentheses. And as you see here, you add the 2 and the 1 first, and then you multiply. The multiplication is shown, as we saw it earlier, by the parentheses, the brackets, and the parentheses. Okay. Unless otherwise indicated, you multiply and divide first before adding and subtracting. Sorry, but my dog is going to interrupt a few times here and there. Anyway, there you go, right? You multiply, divide, then add and subtract. This is how we do things, okay? And here's all your examples. I'm not gonna walk through every one for you. This is for yourself, all right? Rule number 3, if there's parentheses and brackets, you do the parentheses first and then the brackets. And as I said earlier, you work from the inside out. All right? And so that is pretty much our order of operations. And you're going to have to give me a minute here. I am going to have to switch my sharing. All right, so I stop the share. And then I go here. I close this. I'm going to open this. Okay. And I'm going to start the video. All right, I'm back, and now I'm going to share a second screen, hopefully. So as I said, each section has exercises in the back, and there will be an answer sheet that provides the answers for the odd number questions in the exercises, so you can see how you're doing, okay? So here's the exercises for what we just went through, section A, the order of operations, okay? So next, let's see here, somehow, I know I can, there we go. We're going to go to section B, squares and square roots. So exponents. In our case, we're pretty much going to stick to the square, just 2, whatever the number is, times itself, right, squared. that's going to be it. Like when you're using your calculator, you just hit the number you want to square, the multiplication sign and the equal sign, and it will automatically square the number for you. And that's what we'll be doing. So you have your calculator. There's really not much to it. Much better when I was younger. I had to memorize the squares through 25. So I'm looking for my calculator. Oh, here we go. Anyway, here's an example. I'm not going to do that. Anyway, that's what you do, right? Try it out. The same thing, I asked you to get a simple calculator, 5 functions, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and square root. Those are the only 5 functions you need on your calculator. So when you see the square root sign, you can hit the square root button and it will give you the desired answers. And once again, just like everything else, you perform the functions under the square root sign prior to hitting the square root button. Okay? That is the extent of our exponents and how we work. Right? And here is your exercises for section B. Section C, we do a lot of work with negative numbers, right? So how do we add, subtract, multiply, and divide negative numbers? Same thing as always. If there's parentheses, right, perform the operations inside the parentheses first. Nothing to it. Same rules, keeps going through, right? Then rule number 2, I didn't highlight it. When you multiply or divide numbers with the same signs, the answer is always positive, right? So positive number times a positive number, obviously the answer is positive, but a negative number times a negative number, the answer is also positive, okay? If I had my board here, I'd do my little sign thing, but I don't. Anyway, so negative times a negative is a positive, okay? When you add numbers, negatives, if the same sign, so if you add a group of negative numbers, the answer is negative, right? The sum is always negative. If you're adding a positive and a negative number, the best thing to do is switch it to a subtraction problem. So whatever is the larger number, you subtract the other number from it and assign the sign as necessary. So the larger number is the negative number, then of course your answer will be negative. If your larger number is positive, your answer will be positive, but you change it from an addition problem to a subtraction problem. Okay, if you're adding a string of numbers or you're doing functions with a string of numbers, but particularly if you're adding positive and negative numbers, your best bet is to add all the positive numbers and get that sum, then add all the negative numbers and get the sum and turn it into a subtraction problem. Just like we did in Rule 4, and go back to Rule 4, right? All right. Rule 6, when you subtract a negative from a negative, just ignore the sign and the result is negative. Doesn't seem like much of a secret there, right? When you subtract the negative from a positive, the negative becomes a positive, so you add the 2 numbers, right? Same thing, a negative sign and a negative sign together and make a positive, okay? So just like previously, when you were subtracting, it became it became a subtraction problem. Here it becomes an addition problem. I probably confused you even more right there, right? And I think lastly, right, when you subtract a positive number from a negative number, ignore the signs, and the result will be negative. Okay. So. And on your calculator, you typically will have, if you can see this, right, you have a sign, a plus and minus sign. So you can change any number to a negative or a positive as necessary. It's always in a positive, so you can change it to a negative and change it back as needed, okay? And then here we go. There's your exercises for your positive and negative numbers. Okay. Next, we're going to be decimal points, right? So we're going to be working a lot of decimal points. Your calculator gives you everything in decimal points, 8, 6, 8, 10, 10 figures, depending on your calculator, right? So um, everything is about hundreds, thousands, right? So the first point after the decimal point is in tenths, right? The second space after the decimal point is hundreds. The third space is thousands, and on and on. All my answers, I keep asking you to round to 2 decimal points, so you'll be working in the hundreds, right? All right. However, to do that, you have to work in the thousands, and then when you get to the end, you round down to 2. The general rule is you work in one more than you want the final answer in. So our final answers, I always ask you to put the 2 decimal places, so you will work in at least 3 decimal places. Using your calculator, you won't do that until the end anyway, typically. So don't worry about it, okay? But here we go. So decimal points, right? Here you go, 7.73. It's 7 divided by 7.7 divided by 3 is 2.56666666, right? So this becomes 2.57 for our 10 purposes, right? This is how you do it. You can also, as it says up here, use this hint, right? Like if you're dividing 9.362 by 3.190, you know 9 divided by 3 is basically in 3. So if your answer isn't close to that, you know you're off track, right? Ways to check yourself to know whether or not, and there's a lot of this as we go through, I'll be pointing out a lot of things that tell you whether or not you're on the right track, okay? So rounding up and rounding down, this is the thing. So 0 to 4, there's special rules in statistics that is probably different. It's different from the rule I learned about rounding, but for our purposes, we're going to go with the author. We're going to stick with the rules for statistics. So 0 to 4, you round down. 6 to 9, you round up. 5, however, you're going to work in 2 different ways. So if the number preceding the 5 is odd, as in this case, 0.335, that's 3 is the odd number, you round up. All right, so it becomes 10.34. If the number preceding the 5 is even, you round down. So the answer becomes 0.34. Okay. I know that's a little probably more complicated than what you learned in the first place, but for our purposes, this is what we're going to use because this is what the author and statisticians use. Okay. So rounding, you're going to do that a lot of it for almost all your answers because, like I said, your calculator is going to give you a lot of figures, and you're going to want to just get it down to 2. Okay. Decimal points. That's it. All right. So these are some of the things I said. Your calculator is going to give you a lot of decimal points, and you keep going using your calculator until you get to the end, and you're going to round down for your final answer. You're going to round off for your final answer. Here's your exercises for decimal points and rounding. And now we're going to move on to section E, which is fractions, right? And fractions are basically division. All right, so 1 over 6, 1 over 12, those are division problems, right? The new number on top is the numerator. The number on the bottom is the denominator. Hopefully, I don't think this is new to anybody. And the bigger the denominator, the smaller the pieces, right? So 1/12 has twice as many pieces as 1/6. Okay. So rule number 1, right? You convert your fractions to decimals. So we are always going to be doing that. So you do that division unless otherwise directed. You do that first, and then you use the thing. Use your calculator, and then use the decimal point for your computations. Here, rule number 2. Again, you do any of the operations in the numerator or the denominator prior to doing that final division. So as in here, you would add the 1 and the 5 to get 6, and you do the multiplication and end up with 6/12. Then you do the division. Okay. Here's your exercises for fractions, decimal points, etc. All right, and now we're going to move on to percentages. We do a lot of work in percentages. The percentages are helpful in statistics, particularly for comparing groups of different sizes. Okay, but we'll get to all that later. Anyway, percentages are really very simple because it's all based on 100. Right? Everything is about how much of out of 100, right? 25% is 25 out of 100, 50% is 50 out of 100. And everything is about the hundreds, right? So here you go. Whenever you get a fraction, right, you do your division, and then you multiply by 100 to get your percentages. This will get you your decimal points, then you multiply your decimal points by 100 to get your percentages. Very simple. No matter what the fraction is, no matter what the division is, once you get your decimal point, you multiply by 100 and you have your percentages. All right, let's see, where are we? Here's your exercises for the percentages. And that's it. We are at the end. And as I said, along with this being posted in Canvas, there will be an answer page that will give you the solution for hopefully odd exercises, so you will know whether or not you are on the right track. And again, I remind you, if there's anything in here you don't understand, let's really work on getting that clear for you right now, so that when we're moving on, when we're moving much faster and we don't have time to go back, you'll be prepared. Okay, so let me know if you need anything from me or your tutors or whatever the case may be. All right, I'm going to stop sharing this. That should be it for today. And I'll be talking to you soon. I won't see you soon, but I'll be talking to you or at you soon. All right. Thanks.